Luxury shoppers are told that Italian craftsmanship is the ultimate guarantee. Yet behind every Made in Italy label, a vast network of Chinese factories quietly turns out handbags and shoes sold for thousands. Italy still dominates Europe's luxury manufacturing, but the real action happens in Wenzhou, Guangzhou, and hidden districts where costs plunge and profits soar. If you think your favorite Italian designer is immune, prepare to see the evidence that upends everything you thought you knew about authenticity. What legal loophole lets this global switcheroo stay hidden, and which iconic brands are part of the story? Factories in Wenzhou, Guangzhou, and Dongguan hum at all hours, turning out leather goods and accessories destined for European boutiques. In these Chinese manufacturing hubs, wages for skilled workers are a fraction of what Italian artisans earn. A line worker in Dongguan might make $400 a month, less than a tenth of what a seasoned Tuscan leather worker commands. For global luxury brands, the math is irresistible. Cutting labor costs by 70% or more means every bag or shoe shipped from China widens the profit margin, all while retail prices in Milan, Paris, or New York remain unchanged. A supply chain economist describes the incentive as a perfect storm. China offers not just low wages, but a massive, highly trained workforce and a supply base that can handle orders of any size. The China Plus One strategy has become the industry standard, with brands maintaining some production in Italy for marketing, but shifting bulk orders to China or neighboring countries to hedge against risk. This approach keeps factories flexible and supply chains resilient, especially during disruptions like the COVID-19 lockdowns, when Chinese plants reopened far earlier than their European counterparts. Market gravity pulls even harder. By the mid-2020s, China is projected to account for nearly half of all global luxury spending. Brands know that producing closer to their fastest-growing customer base means faster delivery and more tailored collections. As one analyst puts it, you can't ignore a market that buys 1 out of every 2 luxury handbags on Earth. In Wenzhou, entire districts specialize in luxury-grade leather work, their output indistinguishable from the goods produced in Florence. The supply chain has become a global relay: materials sourced in China, semi-finished goods shipped to Italy for final assembly, and finished products sent back to Asia for sale. The result is a seamless system designed for maximum profit, minimal cost, and just enough Italian finishing to keep the label legal. Behind the scenes, the pressure to cut costs and serve the Chinese market has transformed the very idea of what Italian luxury means. A luxury handbag stitched from imported leather in China, lined and assembled in Dongguan, can legally become Italian at the stroke of a needle if the final step takes place in Tuscany. This is not a loophole hidden in the shadows, but a feature of European law. Under Article 60 of the Union Customs Code, the country of origin is defined by the place where the last substantial transformation happens. That means a product's nationality is decided not by where most of the work or value is created, but by the location of its final economically significant process. For a leather bag, that could mean attaching the handles or sewing and aligning on Italian soil, even after every other stage unfolded in Asia. Italian law attempts to go further. The coveted 100% Made in Italy label is reserved for goods where design, planning, processing, and packaging all occur domestically. Yet for most luxury items, a less rigorous standard applies. In the fashion and leather sectors, regulations allow the Made in Italy stamp if at least 2 key manufacturing phases, such as cutting and assembly, take place in Italy. Packaging alone is never enough, but small finishing steps often are. As long as brands can document that these phases happened in an Italian facility, the law permits the label, even if raw materials, components, or semi-finished goods crossed half the globe to get there. This dual system, European Union customs rules and Italy's stricter but limited 100% tag, creates a gray area. Brands can legally market goods as Italian, even when the bulk of the labor, cost, and expertise are sourced elsewhere. Enforcement focuses on outright fraud or false documentation, not on the economic reality behind legal origin claims. As a result, the Made in Italy label often tells only part of the story, and luxury houses have become adept at navigating the fine print. For consumers, the label's promise of heritage and craftsmanship now rests on a technicality, one that many brands rely on to keep up appearances while keeping costs down. A luxury phone case stamped with an Italian brand's logo sits on a shelf in Milan. Its journey began not in Florence, but in a vast factory complex outside Guangzhou. Here, hundreds of workers assemble accessories for a roster of international labels. Industry insiders point to Guangdong as the quiet powerhouse behind the tech accessory boom, producing items that retail for hundreds of euros in Europe yet cost a fraction to manufacture in China. The brand's marketing highlights Italian design, but the real story is buried in procurement paperwork and third-party audit lists rarely seen by the public. Sourcing specialists at China Performance Group compile confidential spreadsheets for clients, internal documents that read like a who is who of luxury. One such list cited in a recent academic study names Fendi, Hermes, Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and others as brands with designer bags produced in China. The specifics, factory addresses, order volumes, and SKU numbers remain locked away, but the pattern is clear. The same Chinese plants that churn out mass-market accessories also supply the world's top luxury maisons. For brand number 10, the evidence is found in the fine print of a supplier audit. A particular phone case sold as part of the brand's latest collection appears on a Guangdong factory's production log. The audit confirms the factory's output matches the model number and finish used by the Italian label. While the brand's website evokes images of Tuscan workshops, the reality is a supply chain routed through southern China, optimized for speed and cost. Brand number 9's story surfaces in a different kind of document, a sourcing list prepared for a major European retailer. The list details a bag line complete with style codes attributed to a Chinese facility known for high-volume runs. Although the retail tag reads Made in Italy, the sourcing trail points east, not west. Such audit lists, while rarely public, are the backbone of modern luxury logistics, quietly tracking the flow of goods from factory floor to flagship store. The illusion of Italian exclusivity is maintained, but the evidence hidden in audit trails and procurement files tells a different story. Hidden inside every luxury bag, wallet, or shoe is a network of suppliers that rarely makes it into glossy campaigns. Snap open a €2,500 purse and the gleaming clasp or zipper is likely stamped with the code traceable back to a Chinese hardware giant. Factories in Zhejiang or Guangdong that specialize in high-polish metalwork for the world's top brands. These components are ordered by the tens of thousands, then shipped to Italy for final assembly. The result is a product that feels Italian by touch, but whose bones are built elsewhere. Marketing, meanwhile, tells another story. Catalogs and billboards show models in sunlit Tuscan workshops, hands brushing over rolls of leather, artisans at their benches. Phrases like centuries-old tradition and heritage craftsmanship dominate the narrative, with barely a mention of global sourcing. Campaigns for brand number 8 lean into the language of legacy, while brand number 7's website offers a virtual tour of a Florentine atelier, though the bag in the foreground is lined with fabric produced in Dongguan and finished with hardware from Wonju. The gap between image and reality is wide, but for years, most customers never looked beneath the surface. That's changing. On social media, watchful shoppers share photos of product tags and dissect serial numbers, flagging discrepancies between marketing promises and actual origin. When a viral post reveals that a much-hyped Italian belt contains a buckle identical to one sold in bulk on Alibaba, comment sections fill with outrage and disbelief. Hashtags like #NotMadeInItaly and #luxury lie trend for days. Forums and Reddit threads become informal audit committees, with users posting side-by-side comparisons of retail goods and Chinese-supplied components. The backlash is swift, and brands are forced into damage control, issuing statements about quality standards and the global nature of modern luxury. But the conversation has shifted. The myth of pure Italian provenance can no longer withstand the scrutiny of a connected, skeptical audience. A luxury handbag sits behind glass in a flagship store, its price tag reading €3,200. What most shoppers never see is the cost breakdown behind that number. Industry analysts estimate that for many designer bags produced in China, the ex-factory cost hovers between €320 and €640, just 10 to 20% of the retail price. The rest is absorbed by branding, marketing, and the premium attached to a story of Italian craftsmanship. This pattern is not limited to a single label. Reports from leading sourcing firms like China Performance Group confirm that brands such as Fendi, Gucci, and Louis Vuitton have designer bags manufactured in China, then shipped to Europe for final touches. The economics are clear. A Chinese factory can produce a medium-sized leather tote for under €500, including materials, labor, hardware, and packaging. Once it arrives in Italy, a few finishing steps, attaching a logo clasp and sewing in a lining, transform it into a product eligible for the coveted Made in Italy mark. For the brand, the profit margin widens dramatically. For the consumer, the price stays high, anchored by the promise of heritage. Proof of this transnational relay is sometimes hidden in plain sight. During a 2023 investigation near Milan, Italian authorities seized customs paperwork from a network of unlicensed subcontractors. The documents detailed shipments of semi-finished leather handbags exported from Guangdong to Italian addresses. Each manifest listed hundreds of units, described as semi-finished leather handbags, valued at €150 per piece. Once in Italy, the bags underwent final assembly before being shipped to luxury boutiques across Europe and Asia. The paperwork is dry, just columns of numbers and codes, but it reveals the real journey. Chinese factories to Italian workshops, then straight to the shelves under a European label. These records confirm what marketing never mentions: the supply chain is global, and the Italian label is often a matter of paperwork, not provenance. Courtrooms in Milan and Florence rarely see class actions over luxury origin claims. The legal bar is high, and the rules themselves are written with enough flexibility to shield brands from most challenges. European consumer groups have tried to push cases against misleading labels, but unless outright fraud or counterfeiting is involved, the courts usually defer to the technicalities of customs law. Under Article 60 of the European Union Customs Code, as long as the last substantial transformation happens in Italy, the label is legal, even if the economic reality is something else entirely. Regulatory investigations tend to focus on egregious abuses, such as unlicensed workshops, fabricated documents, or counterfeit goods, rather than the gray zone of legal outsourcing. The result is a system where most luxury brands face little risk of being forced to disclose their real supply chains in open court. When labor scandals do surface, as in the Armani and Dior subcontracting cases, the headlines fade quickly. Fines are paid, compliance promises are made, and the machinery of luxury continues to hum. For anyone hoping to prove where a particular bag or shoe was made, the next barrier is data. Customs records, both in China and Italy, are coded by product type, not by brand or model. HS codes can tell you how many tons of leather handbags moved from Guangdong to Milan last year, but not which ones ended up on Via Monte Napoleone or Fifth Avenue. Brand-level sourcing lists and purchase orders are tightly guarded, protected by layers of confidentiality agreements and supply chain intermediaries. Even trade data vendors and investigative journalists hit a wall. Without leaked documents or whistleblower access, the full picture remains just out of reach. This opacity is no accident. The luxury sector has little incentive to make its supply chains transparent. The technicality of the law, the limits of available data, and the fragmented nature of enforcement all combine to keep the reality of production hidden from view. Until a shipment manifest or internal order surfaces, one clear document with names, dates, and quantities, the illusion holds. For now, the story of Italian luxury remains a carefully managed secret, protected by law and obscured by data, waiting for the one document that could change everything. Customs microdata tells a story that marketing never will. Over a 5-year span, shipment records show a steady flow of leather goods coded under HS 4202 moving from factories in Wenzhou and Guangdong to Italian importers linked to luxury brand holding companies. Each shipment lists hundreds of units per container, with factory registration numbers matching those found in supplier audits and trade directories. The product descriptions, semi-finished leather handbags, logo hardware, and lined wallets, align with SKUs tracked in retailer databases and internal inventory sheets. An economist specializing in global supply chains examines the data. Shipment volumes spike in tandem with new collection launches, and the same Chinese factories appear as repeat exporters year after year. The pattern is unmistakable. For several flagship lines, the number of units shipped from China to Italy far exceeds the known capacity of Italian workshops. In aggregate, the majority of these products begin life in Asia, not Europe. The final Italian phase, often just assembly or finishing, qualifies them for the Made in Italy label, but the underlying proof chain, validated by independent analysts, confirms the economic reality. These luxury goods are, by volume, predominantly manufactured in China. News of Chinese manufacturing links lands with force. Within days, resale prices for the affected brand's accessories drop 18% on major platforms. Collectors and resellers, once eager to snap up new releases, hesitate or pull listings, citing doubts about authenticity and value. The market's reaction is immediate, and luxury once equated with Italian origin now faces a trust deficit. Shareholders respond in kind. The company's stock sheds 1.2 billion euros in market capitalization in a single week. Analysts warn that the loss of brand mystique could linger far longer than a quarterly dip. Boardrooms fill with tension as executives scramble to reassure investors and the press. An emergency transparency audit is ordered, promising a top-to-bottom review of the supply chain. Inside the workshops of Tuscany, veteran artisans speak out. One leather worker, whose family has crafted bags for generations, calls it a betrayal, not just of workers, but of the entire idea of Italian luxury. If the soul leaves the product, what's left? He asks. The comment is picked up by national media, fueling a debate about what consumers are really paying for: the story, the label, or the craft. As the fallout spreads, it becomes clear that the cost of secrecy is measured not just in euros, but in the erosion of trust and heritage. Today, a luxury label promises heritage, but global supply chains blur old certainties. As EU regulators debate stricter origin labeling, transparency is no longer just a marketing buzzword, it is a demand. What we buy now tells a story about trust, not just taste. The real question is, who decides what authenticity means in a world built on illusion? Let me know what you think in the comments.